Hi, I'm Dan Noone. I am the CEO of G2 Goldfields. We have a gold discovery in Guyana, a high-grade gold discovery. We trade on the TSX under the symbol GTWO and on the OTC under GUYGX. So we've been recently put out an updated mineral resource estimate of about combined 3.1 million ounces at 3 grams a tonne. We've made a new discovery up at Oko North, and we recently, yesterday, put out news with a headline hole of 60 metres, 6 grams a tonne, so quite exciting times.
Quite exciting times. High grade, lots of it, all good news. But first, a little bit of housekeeping, if you don't mind, Dan. Anglo Gold Ashanti have walked away. Was that related to asset quality, valuation strategy? You just didn't get on? What happened?
No, I think, I'm not in the boardroom of Anglo Gold, but certainly, I mean, they bought Sakari last year, which filled in their production gap. They announced this morning they bought Augusta in Nevada, so they consolidated the Beatty district. They've obviously got a lot of things on their plate, and we were the bridesmaid. But they've walked away well. Certainly didn't hang around like a bad smell, because having a corporate in there, 15%, is a bit of a double-edged sword. Other corporates perceive them to be a block on a transaction. So, that was a very amicable walk away. We placed that stock with 2 major funds out of Europe, and that was just 2 meetings. So it all went very smoothly, and it certainly cleared the way for future M&A for us. So I think everyone's happy with that transaction.
Okay, so it was amicable. They kind of gave you time to place that stock, and obviously didn't dump it into the market. That is good news. Did they kind of leave you with any other kind of good news? Was there any sort of technical feedback or thoughts as they left the room?
No, I think after the MRE at 3 million ounces, it was still like wait and see. We're not quite there yet for them. I mean, their minimum is 3.8 million ounces, 380,000 ounces a year. So we certainly weren't there after the MRE in March, so our bid wasn't forthcoming. So we certainly, weren't there. And but I think the most recent news and discovery may push us there. But I mean, like I say, well done them. They've walked away happily, and everyone was a winner on that one.
Okay, and is any lessons learned from you or by you from this whole process in terms of having strategic investors lined up on the side? Would you play things differently next time?
Well, I think it worked out well for us, because when they came in, we were at 67 cents, they bought at 90 cents. It was a validation of the project, validation of the team, validation of the country, and it certainly affected our share price there and reduced our cost of capital. And then they came in again mid last year. So for us, that was the one edge of the sword, and that was very good. But always with a corporate, a 15 or plus 10% block is perceived as a block, no matter how much the insiders had or whatever else. And we always talked that we had 40% of the vote, but for a lot of corporates, that was the first thing that always came up. That Anglo had a blocking stake. So, I think in general, I think it worked out pretty well. I would say it certainly reduced our cost of capital at the time, and now they've walked away, which has opened up the field for all the other companies who may want to be a buyer. And you say 15% is not a blocking stake for a major, but for a mid-tier, maybe it is, or from other potential buyers. So it definitely, it's a dangerous path to walk, getting a corporate in, and it's. But I think for us at the time, if we did it, we would do it again, absolutely.
Okay, well let's kind of get onto the project proper. Obviously, we're talking about resources and economic studies. How are you kind of laying out the pipeline of things that you've got to try and deliver for the rest of this year? What are you focused on?
Well, we're really focused on the new discovery at what we call New Oko, which is 9 kilometres north of the Oko main zone. And so to that end, we've got 4 drill rigs out there at the moment. We're down to 150 metres, over 700 metres strike to date. We want to drill as much as that as we can by the end of September to put out an updated MRE early in the fourth quarter. Not that we'll have finished drilling it, just to get an MRE out there, and then a PEA after that. And the PEA is basically so we can talk to the numbers, the economic numbers, which we've already done an in-house scoping study on, but we can't use those numbers because we've used a lot of assumptions in that, most of them from G Mining's feasibility study, but we still have to generate those numbers ourselves on a number of points. So we'll get that out with the idea that we think we'd be ready to run a process in the fourth quarter where we can get a bit on the table.
Okay. So, well, let's come to that in a bit. Let's talk about new Oko. In terms of results from AMD 30 and 50, obviously great numbers. How are you using that data kind of to vector in on additional drill targets?
Well, basically, it's starting to come out a bit like we see at the Guyana and Block 4. It's hosted in magnetite-rich metavolcanics. And we are getting plunging zones within that shear. So you've got a long linear zone of mineralization averaging about 35 metres wide. Within that, you've got plunging high-grade zones plunging about 30 degrees to the northeast. So we will keep chasing those high-grade zones down, and as we drill nearer the surface, we'll infill to try and get indicated within what we consider to be open pitable material. So, by the end of summer, we'd like to be able to put together a resource at the new Oko, which will go into a PEA, which can add significantly to the number of tonnes you can put through a mill per day at a combined complex. And so that's the key issue here, is really going deeper at Oko.
And tighter spacing on drill holes. Can you elaborate? I think you've talked about the significance of the parallel shears, obviously lower grade, but are they viable secondary targets, or are they fairly low priority?
Well, to date we haven't hit anything which we consider to be really hang together as an economics scale of width and grade. Certainly we'll still chase them along, but the focus. So we've got 4 rigs drilling on the new discovery, 1 rig drilling on the other anomalies around that, and when we hit something significant, we'll focus on that. But we're always trying to explore with 1 rig, and we're still at the early days of understanding exactly what's going on at the new discovery. We think we've got a handle on which stratigraphic unit it's hosted in. We're not quite sure of whether it's just a simple fold or whether they're drag folds on the limb. There's still a lot of things to unravel, but in general, we are hitting the mineralization consistently, and with the high grade, we'll figure that out. On the parallel shears, it'll be the same process. You got to keep poking until you get a good hit, and then you can figure out what's the control on the mineralization.
But what are you actually doing? Are you doing some sort of deep seeking geophysics or oriented core programs, or how are you kind of refining that structural targeting?
Yeah, really, it's drilling, because up here in the Oko, in the northern area, you're under laterites, so you get a sort of disseminated geochemistry with the soils, and once you get into it, then you really need to get into fresh rock and oriented core, and then that will tell you what the controls are.
Okay, and so you said that some mineralization style was what? What was it?
It's magnetite replacement. So it's the same as Block 4 for G Mining and now Guyana. Yeah, so you've got a metamorphosed basalt, which is up to 40% magnetite in places, but generally above 10. And then the mineralization, the pyrites replace the magnetites, and the gold drops out of the bisulfide complex. I'm not getting too scientific, but basically that's the process.
Okay, no, I was just trying to understand. And are there any other sort of clues in there? Any other kind of Pathfinder elements or patterns that you're sort of honing in on with the drilling?
Yeah, we see a east-west foliation and east-west shear zones intersecting that main shear, but we're not quite sure exactly what control that is. But it does seem to be we get broader zones of mineralization there. So yeah, still trying to. That will come together as we get more drill holes and build our models. But yeah, definitely when you do a planned section of geology and alteration, it doesn't actually quite. It's not a perfect model yet. No doubt about that. We're still you got that northeast corridor, but where that high grade is and what the controls on that are, we're not totally sure yet.
Okay, so there are no kind of learnings or clues from Aurora or Karini discoveries at this stage that can be applied. No.
No, I think. No, it's more like Guyana and Block 4 to a degree. I mean, basically you own that magnetite-rich volcanics. It's beddings paralleling shearing. You are getting high-grade zones down the lineation. So relatively, I would say, the nearest thing we've got is Guyana in Block 4.
Okay. So that's okay. That's what you're looking to. So, like, obviously, you've got money to kind of be getting on with this, and if you're kind of seeking to expedite matters, can you just tell us about the sort of time frame for maybe moving into would it be a new PEA? Is that what we're going for?
It'd be initial PEA. We've never done one, so we've done an in-house scoping study.
Right.
We sort of know the answers, but now we need to basically do bulk metallurgy. Is really the thing we've got to do, and then we'll run that PEA straight after the MRE. And we've already started the MRE and the PEA, and we just need to plug the numbers in at the end of September on what we have at the new Oko, and then we'll put that out in the market.
And how are you feeling about all of this? Obviously, we saw that flurry of activity with Reunion, G2, Anglo. You've been in here. You know, Guyana's kind of. Let's say it seems to be in everyone's minds at the moment. But you come from explorer of a certain size to something potentially much bigger. I mean, 3 million ounces it's very nice. The grade is very nice. Does it change your thinking about the way that you allocate capital, how long you're gonna keep doing this for, and maybe what the potential is?
Yeah, this comes back to our fundamental strategy that we think the opportunity in Guyana is, one, putting the land packages together, making discoveries, taking them to a permittable phase, and then selling them. And so that's what we've always said we're going to do. That's what we plan to do. And then we're leading into that in the fourth quarter. And then we'll move on with G3. So basically on this map here, which we have up on the screen, you can see everything to the east of Oko Northwest will now remain in G2 and be on the block for sale. And everything to the west will be G3, all the areas that we haven't really explored significantly and aren't really attached to that basin margin, that particular basin margin. So yeah, we're going to stick with our program here and basically move on. And this is always the tricky point for junior explorers, is they get tempted to go and take it further and go and build the thing. And we're not going to fall into that trap again. So, because it really does slow your timelines down. You fall off the edge of the Lassonde curve. There's a whole bunch of things which aren't value creation, and particularly for our team, which is really good at finding things. And so we're going to stick to that. You know, we're going to have the discipline to get a competitive process going here, and then we will be trying to sell it.
And you think that's big enough now to attract enough interest? There's a point at which things can get too big, and you reduce the size of the I guess competitors looking at this. What do you think of Optimus size that you need to demonstrate in a PEA could be or should be?
Well, I think generally, I mean, if you look at Barrick will say 500,000 ounces a year. That's not going to happen in the next 5 months for us. But Newmont will say 400,000 ounces a year. Anglo will say 380,000. They're the biggest guys. Everybody else would be happy at 300,000 ounces a year, which we're pushing on in our internal studies, and certainly with the new Oko, we'll push through that. So we think we should be pushing near 4 million ounces in a certainly up around 350,000 ounce a year production scenario on a PEA. And that is certainly enough to bring, anyone but, the biggest Barrick to the table, we think.
Right, okay. But let's kind of jump over to G3. I mean, what's happening there?
Well, G3, we drilled over at Peters earlier in the year as a proof of concept. There was a high-grade mine there back in the early 1900s, and it was really within 3 very high-grade chutes. It was 41 grams a tonne. They mined 40,000 ounces. But those chutes were underneath the vertical shaft, the incline shaft, and Herod's Hill. We drilled in between the incline shaft and the vertical shaft, because that is a one long deformation zone, a shear zone. The idea being that there should be mineralization along there as well. And we hit 76 metres at 1.5 grams in the sandstones, went into a siltstone, then it comes out in the volcanics on the other side. And on the other side, when we drilled back from east to west at Herod's Hill, we hit in the volcanics 3 metres at 12 grams. Now, significantly, in the first hole, the footwall zone there ran 15 metres at 6 grams. So not dissimilar to the grades of mineralisation we see at Guyana, where you've got like a broad zone of almost 1 gram, finishing off in a high-grade zone on the contact. So for us, that proof of concept is we've got 4 kilometres or 4 miles. I think it is, or 4 kilometres. I'm going to check that. But on the in that mining claim, which has been completely worked out by the artisanal miners historically at surface, but that mineralisation conceptually goes that whole length of that 4 kilometres, not dissimilar to what we see at the from Oko main zone down to the south of Block 4. So that's really the target we'll be going after, and that's sort of up there in G3. Also, we've got another, we've got 80,000 acres in G2 at the moment, 40 of which will be in G3, and we've got 10 soil sampling teams out there currently, sampling like crazy, so generating targets, doing what we do best, and we'll be constantly drilling, and we'll work over projects, and the idea is this area, a bit like Nevada in the 1980s, has historically had mineralization discovered in small mines, but no one's really gone and done the scientific work to put together the big deposits, and that's the opportunity here, and that's what we'll be continuing to do with G3. And to that end, we also are negotiating on about another 110,000 acres in that general district. So we plan on being here for a long time.
Yeah, you're not retiring anytime soon, Dan, by the sounds of it. For sure. And you managing obviously two sets of teams there with the very very different controls and targets and etc. But both companies seem well funded to do what you want to do. Your wish for G2 though is what's the time frame for you, so you can get back to, I guess, what you seem to be quite excited about G3 and package up obviously what's going on at G2. Is that something that you're going to stay around to do?
Well, at G2 we'll be here until basically we transact it, and that's we think that's a relatively short period of time. Certainly we think after the PEA and have those numbers from the updated MRE, that's really as far as you want to take it, and that'll be right in the final stages where you can go and permit. And that really is where we should step out and move on with exploration.
And is that the perfect time? Because like we've talked over the years, right? And you obviously as a CEO, you've got to say, we obviously will look at bids if they come in. But was it always sort of going to be too early for you pre-PEA? Is this the optimum time for G2 and G2 shareholders?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we honestly thought after the updated MRE in March that we would have been in a situation to get a competitive bid. Obviously, that didn't happen. But now with the path clear for numerous companies as opposed to just Anglo, we think the PEA is further than we probably thought we would go. But being able to talk to the economic numbers, I think, has become a bit of an imperative to get the stock price to where it needs to be for a transaction, and to also get the bidders in. I mean, it's not like the old days of P-Arena after 15 holes, Barrick bids $1 billion. It doesn't happen anymore. Right? These companies seem to want to have everything delivered really on a plate. They're almost permitted before you get there. So that's been dictated to by the market for us. But we think we'll be there in the fourth quarter.
And just looking around, obviously, like there's been a few transactions over the past 12 months. Gold's obviously gone to very, very, very interesting times for gold, indeed. Not too many projects that are meaningfully advanced development stories. I mean, how do you position? So, what do you think of the jurisdiction that you're working in? Is that going to be appealing to these potential bidders? Is the timing right for you, do you think, in terms of bringing a project of scale to market? Will the money be there? Yeah,
I think that's a really good question, Matthew. And over the last few years, you've seen acquisitions happen post-permitting. I mean, even with the Cisco, they were building the mine before Goldfields stepped up and took the other half. So I think we're starting to see companies come down the food chain. You saw the transaction for Lumina Gold in Ecuador a few weeks ago, and that's not even permitted. I mean, it's 16 million ounces. It's a big deposit, but that's big capex on that. So, I mean, I think we're starting to see companies come down the food chain as you would expect as the M&A dries up with all the ripe cherries at the top. As far as the country's concerned, Guyana is definitely considered to be an investable place, certainly for the North Americans now, because Exxon's there, but even for the Chinese, considered to be very investable. You have Zijin to the north of us. You have CNOOC owns 25% of that oil joint venture with Exxon. So, the Chinese companies are more than happy to be there. The American companies are happy to be there. So we think we really are in a jurisdiction which isn't impeded by political events or thoughts.
Okay. Well, I think that's fine. And I just wanted a quick update on, obviously, one, Anglo situation, two, more importantly, some of these numbers that you're putting out, quite impressive. Dan, let's stay in touch. We'll speak to you soon, okay?
Thank you very much, Matthew.